Welcome back, everybody. Derrick Soo, your East Oakland advocate. Well, have you thought about adding some additional food to your refrigerator, especially with high costs? So here's a tip that I grew up with. We used to fish in the bay and also outside the bay because my parents, my dad had a boat. We had lots of family members with boats, and we had a lot of friends with boats, and so we were fishing. And this time of the year, while it's not a great fishing opportunity for a lot of folks, and also because the waters are so full of fresh water now that our typical saltwater species that we see aren't in the bay. They're either upstream or out in the ocean in other waters. But we had the herring run in December, and we have lots of herring roe that are now starting to hatch. And so pretty soon the bay is going to be full of fry herring. And so that sets up a lot of fishing opportunities coming in this coming year and in the coming years, because we flushed the bay clean of a lot of contaminants, toxins, and also set up a much cleaner environment with all this rain flushing everything. And so this sets up a good scenario. So I'll be right back with some fishing tips for you. So getting back to the fishing, this time of the year, there's not a whole lot of species of fish that are really good to eat other than sturgeon. If you never had sturgeon before, it's kind of like eating chicken. It is like eating chicken. It's flaky, it's soft, it has a very light flavor, and there's a lot of different ways you can cook sturgeon. And one of my favorites is to smoke it. Cut them into pieces and then smoke it for a number of hours over a hardwood. And it is excellent. But then in the summer, we have striped bass coming down from the rivers. Many of them have just finished spawning, and they're heading back to the ocean for a year or two to feed on herring, sardines, anchovies out in the open ocean. And so this affords opportunities for these fish to get much bigger, and also affords us lots of opportunities for food, for additional food. A small sturgeon can add about 30 pounds of meat to your refrigerator. Striped bass, typically anywhere from 8 pounds to 20 pounds, could be added to your refrigerator. A halibut can add 20 pounds. And then if you're not into the larger predatory fish and you want smaller fish, the silver perch, rubber lip perch are available around Highland. Sadly, there used to be a lot of fishing piers here in the Bay Area, and they were established, put up during the 70s, and some of them even back during the ferry terminal time, when the bay pretty much ran, and how you got across the bay was with the ferry boats. So anyway, the Berkeley Pier was one of those locations, but now it's been completely closed off because it's not been maintained. It needs full replacement, and it's very dangerous to walk on. So they closed it a number of years ago. That took away a huge resource for fishing the bay. But you can still do shore fishing, but if you have a boat, there's a lot of different opportunities all over the bay. And that, back in my time, the bay was loaded on the weekend with fishermen and boats. And I'll tell you what, The cost of fishing sure has risen over the decades that I've been participating in it. And when I first started fishing, I go out on the party boats back in the 70s, 80s, and I was paying $25 for a place on a party boat. Nowadays, it is shocking. It is $250 to go on a party boat today, and that's out of Emeryville or Berkeley. Because I just looked that up, I was absolutely shocked. So right now, it is equal for me to get a used boat that does operate and buy my own equipment and then go fishing. But like I said, you can add quite a bit of meat to your refrigerator or freezer. Because that's what we did when I was small. My dad and I, we would catch striped bass. We catch our limits on a nightly basis during the summer down here on the Oakland estuary near 5th Avenue. And we didn't have to go use a boat or anything. We just fished from the shore and the bridge. Going out on the bay, there's a lot of opportunities, like I said, for larger game. There's also, if you don't have a boat and you're having to fish from shore, Alameda rock wall is an option because there's a lot of opportunities for perch fishing, for halibut out there if you have a surf rod to get out far enough. And also during the winter months like this, you'll also have good opportunities for sturgeon. Another good place for sturgeon is across the bay at Fort Baker, just outside the marina and the Coast Guard station over there. So a lot of good-sized sturgeon are caught along that area. San Pablo Bay is one, but right now I don't fish San Pablo Bay because of the rough water and the fast water. And that's why I go to the South Bay for this time of the year, especially right after heavy rains. You don't get so beat up on the boat, and the water's not moving so fast. I've been up in Carquinez, fished Carquinez, fished San Pablo Bay this time of the year, and water can be as fast as 9 miles an hour. That was on my fish finder shark plotter GPS, and I had a sensor on there that tells me how fast the water is moving underneath my boat while it is anchored. And so sturgeon fishing is an anchored fishing sport. What you'll have to do is find the fishing zones, and this is where party boats, if you don't have experience with sturgeon fishing, can be a big help, because they'll show you how to set everything up, how to rig the baits and what type of baits, and also they'll let you know what baits work in what areas. So these are all important things that you can learn on a party boat, so that $250 that you would pay to have a spot and fish on there, while there's no guarantees you're going to catch any fish for that money, it is an opportunity, and it is a great opportunity for learning how to fish for sturgeon with professionals. And from there, you can go in the direction that I did, which was purchasing my own boats and my own equipment and fishing. One of the things that I did better than party boats, I used a different reel. I used a rod specifically for sturgeon fishing, and there used to be a couple of companies that made sturgeon rods, and how you know it's sturgeon rods, it will specifically say so. And those rods will be able to cast 32 to 36 ounces of weight. We're talking 2 pounds of weight that it can cast. Not very far, but it can cast it without breaking the rod and the tip. And then the reels, all my reels were Shimano TLD 15s. And I'll give you a tip on setting up your drags on this. The reason why I like the TLD is that it had a lever drag, and so we can set the drag as little as just free spool and as heavy as 20 pounds of resistance with the drags. And what we do on that, what I did, how professionals and tournament fishermen set their reels up. On a reel like this, you preload for the line that you're using, and in this case, we're using a 90-pound Power Pro weed line. It was a woven line, and very flexible, very soft, very thin, and so you can get a lot on there. And here's the tip that on preloading your drag, so that when you put your drag all the way forward, you're at your maximum preset, and this guarantees that your line is not likely to break, because what you're doing, you're setting your maximum drag, your resistance, at 1/3 of the breaking line strength. So in this case, we're able to put up to 30 pounds of pressure, resistance, fighting resistance on the fish. And so that's what we do. And then by preloading that, setting that maximum, it gives plenty of strength for the line to absorb any shock and hard strikes that may occur during the initial hookup with the fish. So anyway, preset your drags at 1/3 the maximum strength of your line. So in this case, if we're using a 90-pound test Power Pro braided line, we would preset the maximum drag at 30 pounds of resistance. And then what we would do on that, we would also use a 30-pound leader, maximum resistance leader. I like to use fluorocarbon because it's a little more abrasion resistant. Also, it tends to stay with the same light refraction level as water, so the line is less likely to be seen. And the hooks that I use, I always use some of the top hooks. In this case, I use Gamakatsu's octopus hooks. But also remember that sturgeon fishing currently, you cannot use a barbed hook. And so if you're going to use a Gamakatsu octopus hook like I do, then what you want to do is take a pair of pliers, flatten that barb out that's on the end of the hook, so that you're in compliance with fishing regulations. And the reason why I like using the octopus hook is because it's the proper length when you go to rig up ghost shrimp, mud shrimp on these hooks. And so you're able to put the bait on the hook in line and then tie it down with the magic thread, magic string that you just wrap the crap out of it, because the mouth of the sturgeon can literally suck that bait right off of there so fast that you wouldn't even know that the fish was there. That's how light they bite. They're not like other fish that hit it and run. Sturgeon, when they find bait, they pick it up in their mouth, and it's like a big vacuum bag, and just goes in and out and feels everything. It's very sensitive, and so you want to make sure that the hook is well camouflaged in the bait, and that you have enough magic thread on there so that he doesn't suck that bait right off there. Each one of those baits back in my days, in 2005, 2006, when I fished, they were $1.25 going up to $1.50 each, and you had to order them ahead of time so that you had enough bait. And in order to have enough bait, you needed to order about 50, 60 of these, because there's a lot of junk fish in the bay this time of the year, the scavenger fish, and you'll see them. They come through quite often. You have the bat rays, you have other types of rays out in the bay, plus sharks that can tolerate the lower salinity water. But the croakers, they look like goldfish here in the bay, and they're about 2 pounds. They're not worth eating because they have an iodine sac in them, and if you cut into that iodine sac, it ruins the fish. Plus, the fish is already pretty bony. It's kind of like a carp. That's why we kind of call them the goldfish of the bay, because that's what they are. When you bring them up, they're bright orange, yellow color, so they look like a giant goldfish. They don't have any food value for us. They are a scavenger fish that helps clean up the waste in the bay, so they are an important fish. But what I do, we also tend to get a lot of pelicans, so I keep these large croakers, and then when pelicans start showing up around the boat, and that usually happens right at slack tide. So either at the bottom of of an ebb, or at the top of a flooding tide, you have about an hour, 45 minutes, where things are just kind of there, and you're not moving, the water's not moving, and this is when pelicans start showing up. And to get rid of them, you throw them a couple of those croakers, they leave, and that's how you get rid of pelicans and keep them from hovering around you. But anyway, back to the sturgeon fishing. Once you do get a sturgeon, they bite very lightly, and if you've never sturgeon fished before, let me tell you, it's different. You have to be good at this, and you want a rod with a fast or extra fast tip on it, because a lot of times what ends up happening, sturgeon, when they find your bait and they pick it up, all you'll see, that's it. That's all you'll see on your fishing tip. And then you'll see the line go really slack. When the line goes really slack, then you know he's feeding on there. And then that's the time when you really want to set up the hook set. And the hook set is real important, because they have real tough, rubbery flesh around their mouth, and so what you need to do is get a really good jerk on the rod so that you get a good hook set on the really rubbery flesh that's around their mouth. And then once that hook is in them, you'll know, because they'll take off. When the sturgeons start taking off, the race is on. And some of my students that I've taught, oh my God, I think I hooked a submarine. Because they take off, and then all of a sudden they'll turn around and come back at you, and then take off. They're very smart fish, or if they know where your anchor line is, they'll try and wrap the anchor line. I've had them wrap my outdrive and cut themselves off. So they are very intelligent fish. They know how to get off of a line, and they're very, very strong fighters. If you've never fought a big game fish, this is a big game fish that will surprise you at how strong they truly are. And so it's important that you have a good hold of the rod, you have good equipment, you have plenty of strength on the line that you use, and using the bait, matching the hatch wherever you're fishing. So if you're up in the Carquinez Straits or the Delta, the primary bait tends to be the lamprey eel, and that works very well. So you fish with live eels. Not exactly my favorite. Also, you have to deal with really, really fast water this time of the year, coming through the straits. And so that's why I like fishing down here in the South Bay, San Leandro, Harbor Bay Isle, Dumbarton Bridge areas, because the water is much smoother and wider. It's nowhere near as fast, and it just makes for a little more pleasurable day out rather than getting beat up by the weather, beat up by the water, the boat constantly moving and everything. Whereas down here in the South Bay, it's pretty smooth. A lot of times it's like fishing on a lake. But the cost of fishing nowadays is just so crazy. I used to say, for my small boat, my little 21-footer that I had, that I would fish inside the bay during nice weather. That one cost me $250 a day to fish. That's just the boat. We're not talking about bait, the rods, or anything else. Each one of my rods carried a value of $600. I had 6 rods at one time, and all custom for sturgeon fishing. Then I had custom rods for halibut, for striped bass, for fly fishing, for salmon fishing, for just about everything. I had a lot. It was incredible. I had a whole bedroom of fishing rods and reels. That's where I spent a lot of my money. And I was semi-pro, and I was sponsored by several companies for that's how I got by on saving some of the cost. Because the hooks are very expensive, the lines are very expensive. Everything's expensive now. And at the time, I had different bags for different types of fishing. I had a grab bag just for saltwater, and a grab bag for freshwater. Actually, I had 3 different grab bags for freshwater, because some were for lakes, some were for streams, rivers. So there's different types of fishing that I did with all over. And I had 3 different boats. I had my 30-footer in Berkeley. That's where I met my friend Abe Cunanan, the foremost expert on California sturgeon. And he's a conservationist here in the Bay Area that works with the California Department of Fish and Game. And he was also one of the expert testimony witnesses in the Scott Peterson trial, the guy who murdered his wife and unborn child. So he was the one that pretty much said that Scott Peterson was lying when he said he was sturgeon fishing right there outside of the Berkeley Marina in the fishing, or in the shipping channel. He was actually in the shipping channel, which is 50 feet deep, far deeper than sturgeon prefer, because none of their feeding, none of their food is that deep. And plus, Abe looked at what was presented in terms of his fishing tackle, his fishing rods, and everything, and none of it was specific for sturgeon fishing. And so that's how his story was completely negated by Abe Cunanan during the trial. But anyway, back to adding some meat to your refrigerator if you're struggling these days. Think about getting a good surf rod, 12 to 15-foot surf rod, a good spinning reel. For reels, I like the Shimano's, and Daiwa also has some reels that are very similar. What you want is what is called a bait run feature or a bait feeder feature. Both those brands have that. I love the Shimano bait runner. They were the first one that came out with the bait runner series in the spinning rings. And that made me absolutely deadly on fish, because when I fished bait, I could let them go ahead and run off with the bait for a distance, and then flip a lever, and then the hook sets itself while they're running with the bait and hooking them out. TLD works in very similar fashion. You don't have to get too expensive. You know, back in my day, the TLD 15 was about I think $150, and then the Power Pro line. I bought the bulk spools, so there's probably about $100 worth of line on the reel. I would spool approximately 800 yards onto a TLD 15. So if you're really interested in saving, eating a little bit better, sturgeon, if you can get on one of the party boats, or you're already experienced on sturgeon fishing, you can save yourself some money. And I haven't been out on the water recently, but given the hard economic times, I don't anticipate, and I don't see how there's going to be a lot of people fishing, unfortunately. That's probably not one of their priorities for a lot of folks, as they're just trying to struggle to keep a roof over their head. So anyway, that's what we did to work with the food budget, to stretch our food budgets back in the 70s and the 80s, and even today that it still applies, but it's just more challenging these days. And so get out there, get some sunshine, catch some fish. Oh, be sure to get your California fishing license. Because if you don't, it's a really heavy fine. If you don't have one, go by a bait shop, get at least a day permit, which is $10, because you don't want to get the fines from Fish and Game. Chances of Fish and Game actually pulling you over, stopping and fining you is small, but it does happen. And in the 30 plus years that I was fishing on the bay, I was stopped by Fish and Game 3 times over all of those years. So it's not likely that Fish and Game can snag you out on the water, but they can also snag you at the dock. So be sure to have your fishing license. These days, Fish and Game wardens are out looking for illegal fishermen, poachers. Poaching is a big problem, but not so much here in the bay, but it is still a problem. Thanks for joining me today. Good luck fishing. We'll be right back.